So Freddy Gaudreau scores, and moments later, an extension is announced. Coincidence? Probably not. Here is why Freddy Gaudreau's extension is a great deal for the Wild. Today on Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild. Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day and part of your daily routine. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we discuss Freddy Gaudreau's new 5-year extension and why it is a good deal for the Minnesota Wild. We'll talk about Freddy's fit in the lineup, what he brings to the table, and why this may just be the beginning for the Freddy Gaudreau experience. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, and during the game, Wild playing Nashville right now, Freddy Gaudreau scores the game-tying, at the time, goal for the Wild. And then an extension announced immediately after that by the Minnesota Wild. It's a 5-year deal for Freddy Gaudreau, $2.1 million per year. So all told, a 5-year, $10.5 million contract extension for the guy that is the shootout king for the Minnesota Wild, but also just such a steadying presence in this lineup and a guy that fills a lot of hats. So it has looked more and more over the last couple of years like Gaudreau was a guy that could be a reliable option on this team. His free agent status getting closer, was set to become a free agent at the end of this season. And so the move makes sense. The timing may be a little bit of a surprise. But what this does for the Wild is a couple of things. Obviously, the Wild have limited funds to work with salary cap-wise over these next couple of seasons. Gaudreau was making $1.2 million on the second year of a 2-year deal that he signed with the Wild. And so you get him locked in at a pretty solid number for the next 5 seasons. Gaudreau, not particularly. He is 29 right now, turns 30 on May 1st, and so you get him up to the age of 35. And honestly, just look at some of the things that have happened for Gaudreau since he came to Minnesota. Obviously, early in his career, he was a back-end guy. First 3 years in the league in Nashville, didn't really play much at all. Then he goes to Pittsburgh in 2020, 2021, has an intriguing 19-game cup of tea with the Penguins there. So Bill Guerin obviously had some familiarity with him in the minor league system before getting called up to the Penguins as a 27-year-old. Goes to Minnesota, has 44 points last year, 14 goals, 30 assists, part of that dynamic Kevin Fiala, Matt Boldy line. And now this year, career high in games, career high in goals, career high shooting percentage. He does a lot of really, really good things well. And something that I don't think I really understood just to the extent of in looking at his stats. An extremely smart player, an extremely careful player with the puck. So 10 penalty minutes right now through 81 games. So you're talking 5 penalties total in 81 games so far this year. His shooting percentage has gone up to 12.6%. You've got the career high in 17 goals. But how about this? 81 games, He has given the puck away 21 times. He's taken the puck away 42 times. Also registering a career high in blocks with 52. His faceoff percentage in a career high faceoffs taken, 49.2%. He was at an even 50% last year, 49.2 this year in a career high attempts. And just, again, just a solid, steady presence for this team. A guy who has played on a second line role, a guy who has filled in on the top line. Is he maybe more of a bottom six guy? Probably. But does he allow you flexibility and knowing that you're going to get a guy who brings calm into the lineup, who doesn't seem overly, at this point in his career, he doesn't seem overly overwhelmed by what's going on? It's, especially at the center position, it is giving the Wild some cost assurances for that position here as they move forward. You've got Joel Eriksson locked up. Great defensive center, continuing to improve what he does on the ice from an offensive perspective, face-offs. Eriksson showing that improvement year by year. Freddy Gaudreau doing the same thing. And so you've got two centers in the mix that are giving you year by year improvement. And we know how much Dean Evason trusts in Freddy Gaudreau, especially with Joel Eriksson out of the lineup, playing a ton on the penalty kill. He's contributed on the power play as well. A guy that can fill a lot of different roles. And for a coach that's valuable at that price point, that is also very valuable. We have hopes that Marco Rossi is going to be a top six guy in the lineup when he gets a little more seasoning and slides into one of those spots. We have hopes that he's going to be able to do that. So if Gaudreau plays higher in the lineup now and lower in the lineup later, that's fine. That's not a problem with where this team is currently at. And look at it too. You've got guys that are a little older in the lineup now, such as Marcus Foligno. You've got a guy in Ryan Hartman who is nearing the end of his deal. And so you have some of those guys that are those veterans right now that are probably not going to be here in a few years. And you now have a guy in Freddy Gaudreau who clearly valued fit over cash. He would have been able to get a lot more than 2.1 a year out on the open market, but likes what's going on in Minnesota and wanted to continue to help build what is being built here in Minnesota. After the Parise and Suter contracts are mostly off the books, $2.1 million for a middle six center or bottom six, wherever you want to put him, middle six, bottom six, $2.1 million a year for a guy like that is not that's not going to break your bank at all. So I think it's a great deal for the Minnesota Wild. I think you're talking about a guy that fills a lot of key roles on this team, and the year-to-year improvement is the thing that does it for me. And showing that improvement in very key areas, considering the struggles that this team had offensively for most of the season, it's important. And so congrats to Freddy Gaudreau and the extension to stay a member of the Minnesota Wild here for the next 5 seasons. Steady Freddy, 5 years, $10.5 million per. Nicely done, Billy G. We will continue today's show talking a little bit more about where Freddy Gaudreau would slot into the lineup as things go along, as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after a word from our sponsors. Are you looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories attached? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. Built, you have got to try this. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing. Built bars and built puffs. Built bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing, you won't think they're good for you. You have got to try this. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They also have some unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I don't know how Built Bar continues to make this happen, but these are their healthiest bars ever. Each Built Bar contains only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Best of all, you no longer need to wait for your order to show up at your door. Swing by Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can buy a box of Built Bar today. If you don't have one nearby, you can still head to Built.com. Either way you choose, make sure that you choose Built Bar today. Continuing today's episode of Locked on Wild, once again, thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day and making Locked on Wild part of your daily routine. For the everydayers, tomorrow we will recap the season with the year in review as we guide you towards the postseason. We have a ton of postseason content coming up next week, so make sure to stay tuned for that as we get closer and closer to playoff time. So, Steady Freddy signing his extension, obviously before the game, was announced during the game. 5 years, $10.5 million, and fit at this point. Let's look at where Gaudreau slots in right now. Obviously, he has taken the spot of Eriksson Ek in the lineup because, as Dean Evison and Bill Guerin have talked about, Gaudreau can give you a similar element to the things that Eriksson Ek does well to complement Matt Boldy and Marcus Johansson. So we've seen Freddy Gaudreau take that spot in the lineup. Now, obviously, when Eriksson Ek is on the ice, we've seen Freddy Gaudreau take that third line center spot and be that portion of the lineup, which again allows him to emulate what Eriksson Ek brings to the lineup as one of those defensive physical centermen. So he can help you offensively, he can help you defensively, depending on what you need in the lineup. Gaudreau played after Ryan Hartman got dumped off of the top line early in the season due to penalties and inconsistencies. Gaudreau was able to slot into that top spot in the lineup and give steady production. He didn't end up staying in that spot because, maybe that is a little too tall, too high in the lineup for him to go. But he can play there, and he holds his own. He holds his own on the second line. He holds his own on the third line. He just is a chameleon for fits in the lineup and what he's able to bring to the table. Going forward beyond this season, let's assume that Ryan Hartman, Eriksson Ek are your top two centers. Freddy Gaudreau is going to be one of those bottom two. And if you end up with Marco Rossi as the third center, Gaudreau could slot further down in the lineup. Ultimately, I don't think he will. But again, the reason that this contract is so good is not only that Gaudreau is able to play all these different spots, he can play some wing too. A lot of response to the contract extension, initially mentioning that Gaudreau has played some wing, so we can offer you some versatility there as well. That was initially one of the spots that we thought he was going to play coming into the season. But not only can he, but he does whatever he's asked to do. And so he's one of those guys as well that coaches know that they can count on to do whatever needs to be done any given shift, any given game, any given series. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on Freddy Gaudreau heading into the postseason, depending on how long it takes for Joel Eriksson Ek to get back, because he is going to be expected to hold the fort down defensively as one of the top penalty kill options, but also while he's out there on the ice, he's going to be relied upon to be one of the top defensive clamp guys from the forwards, in addition to trying to help Matt Boldy and Marcus Johansson do their thing offensively. So, ton of pressure for Steady Freddy to step into as the postseason looms next week. But Gaudreau's unflappable, guys. He's unflappable in whatever's going on the ice. I think that shows most with his shootout performances. And I know shootouts by and large don't mean a whole hill of a beans lot. It's just a way to determine winners or 1-point getters during the regular season. So I know there's not a huge amount of stock put into it, but watch Freddy Gaudreau, watch some of his shootout highlights. Super calm out there on the ice. And another aspect that Gaudreau is able to help with, leading the team in shorthanded goals. And so while he's out there on the penalty kill, it's no secret that this Wild team, they took the shorthanded goals this year to replicate the empty net goals last year. That aggressive style of penalty kill allows the Wild to pull opponents out towards the top of the zone. And then you have guys that just wait for their moment, whether it be Connor Dewar, whether it be Brandon Duhaime, whether it be Freddy Gaudreau. They just wait for their moment at the top of the zone, poke the puck free, and there's nobody to run you down from behind. Just a nice, quick skate to the opposing goalie and collecting an easy goal. He's been great at that here this season as well. Beyond this season and going into the next couple of years, obviously the Wild they're going to have some funds that will be able to be allocated in a couple of years. So Gaudreau will still be here, but you're going to have, a ton of money to throw at whatever. And you've got Kirill locked up. Let's just look at 2025, 2026. You've got Gaudreau locked up. You've got Eriksson Ek locked up for 5.25. You've got Matt Boldy locked up for $7 million. And now you got Freddy Gaudreau locked up for $2.1 million. So Bill Guerin prioritizing guys that he views as part of the core, that deeper building blocks of this team. And is Freddy Gaudreau a core guy on this group? Maybe not, but he does a lot of important things well. And he is continuing to show improvement on a year-to-year basis. And so that's valuable. That's valuable for Bill Guerin as a GM to get some guys into the mix that he knows he can rely on to do their job on a nightly basis. So yeah, I think it's a great extension for the Wild. And as I sit here, I think he just scored again. Yep, he sure did. So Freddy Gaudreau now 2 goals tonight. We're recording during the Nashville game because a lot of subs in the lineup, and so it's not a hugely pleasant experience to watch. But 2 goals for Gaudreau. He's now got 18 on the season, so I think it's just a slam dunk for Bill Guerin here this year. Now, one other thing I did want to talk about to finish today's episode. Calen Addison is playing a wing spot tonight. Is that a preview of maybe a switch in positions for him in the offseason and beyond? We will discuss that to finish off today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. There's nothing more stressful than sitting around the house and deciding to yourself, hey, Twins are playing today. I'd love to go to a game. Well, have you looked for tickets the day of recently? A lot of times you're not able to find what you're looking for, or the prices are just insane. But the Game Time app is here to help you make the day of buying experience way, way easier. Some of the things that I love most about the Game Time app is the flash deals and last minute tickets they offer. They make it so easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event, not just sports, every kind of event in your area. They show you images of the event from your seat, and they offer lowest price guarantee plus event cancellation protection, job loss protection, you name it, they've got it. You can forget planning months in advance because Game Time is the place for last minute ticket deals. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute ticket deals, lowest price, guaranteed. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day and part of your daily routine. Everydayers, we've got playoff content coming up for you next week. We'll be talking with Kevin Gorg. We'll have our full 5-person Locked On Wild playoff panel. It's a lot of alliteration, I know. And whoever the opponent ends up being for your Minnesota Wild, we'll have a head-to-head preview of that series as well. So make sure that you dial it up and get ready. Postseason is here next week. So amongst the lineup decisions for tonight's game against the Predators, Calen Addison playing a wing spot. And this is interesting to me. And I did want to get to this topic because we did have it in the comments from earlier. And I didn't really know what to, I didn't really know how that would play out, or if that would be something that that the Wild would even be looking at. It was Gary on YouTube asking about this actually just a couple of days ago. So, see, Gary, we get it in today because the Wild are giving it a shot. Addison on the wing spot, and the thing with Calen Addison in this instance is you are looking at a guy who is good offensively. He's good. Puck vision is great. He's good at moving the puck around. He's obviously got some playmaking ability. From an offensive skill set, defensively is a work in progress. There just are a lot of lapses defensively. They're not all his fault. They're not. But there are just a lot of breakdowns that are the reason that he has not played as consistently here over the last 20, 25 games of the season as he did in the first 60 games of the year. And so with him being a guy who is maybe not going to stick around as a defenseman, I don't know where he ranks on the Wild's priority list in terms of re-signings this offseason. If I had to rank where we're at with all of them, Philip Gustafsson is number 1 in terms of a re-signing. You're looking at the president of the Brandon Duhaime fan club right here. So Duhaime is number 2. And you've got solid veterans in the lineup. Ryan Reeves, I would put on the list. He's a guy that I'd be interested in having back for what he brings from a leadership standpoint, from a veteran standpoint. You probably would be able to get him for pretty cheap, and he would be a guy that could come in and kind of help offset that loss of Mason Shaw on the fourth line. But anyway, you've got definitely those top two in Gustafsson and Duhaime that are priority re-signings. And Freddy Gaudreau was on that list too before his extension. He probably would have been second on that list behind Philip Gustafsson. So is there potential that Calen Addison's going to get traded with Brock Faber in the wings, with a few other guys defensively that look pretty close to ready to play, and are a little more suited on the defensive side of the ice? Would it work to shift Calen Addison to a forward spot and then put him in that bottom six and just see how it goes? Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to the defensive side of the puck in determining if that works or not, because if he were to be swapped to a forward spot, you still would have the defensive aspects of the game that would need to be worked on. And so ultimately, it may end up that he just uses this as kind of a learning experience year, puts in some work in the offseason defensively, and comes back and gives it another go. Because let's not throw the biggest part of this out without acknowledging it. That Wild power play with Addison in the lineup looks completely different than it does now. But the Wilds have had the stance the whole time with this situation that you can't just contribute on the power play to be in the lineup. You got to be able to take some strides defensively. And again, that bottom pairing has been a journey this year, and we're going to talk more about that going into the postseason next week. There's concerns with that bottom grouping. But if you are going to be playing regular minutes, it's got to be more than just as a specialist. So maybe they are doing this just to see kind of what it would look like, and we'll go from there and reevaluate in the offseason. That's Bill Guerin's decision to find out. Now, I don't know if Billy G would have the guts to do this, but how cool would it be to see a Philip Gustafsson extension during Game 1 of the postseason as Gustafsson is drawing against whoever the Wild end up playing in that first round series, Colorado or Dallas? How cool would that be? That might be the only way that Bill Guerin can top an in-game extension on a night in which the guy that signed the extension has scored twice. So hats off again to Freddy Gaudreau. I love the deal because he brings a lot of different things to the table. We'll see how it plays out, as we will with all of these extensions that the Wild have inked this season. That'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, now that your first listen of the day is done, make sure you check out the Locked On NHL podcast to get the full lowdown on the final few spots of playoff positioning that are available to be clinched. You can get all that at Locked On NHL, wherever you listen to your podcast, just like Locked On Wild. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms so that you can become one of our everydayers and you never miss out on the conversation throughout the week, throughout the season, throughout the off season. Come be part of the fun here at Locked On Wild as we propel forward into the postseason. Also, make sure to follow us on social media. We will keep you up to date on all things Minnesota Wild all throughout the week with pre- and post-game content, as well as new episodes every Monday through Friday, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network.